Usually when I'm doing these sorts of tutorial videos or beat breakdowns, I'm trying to do it as truthfully as possible, meaning that I'm using all the same sort of VSTs and hardware, the same guitars and effects pedals I would use when making music for any other purpose. That means that I'm showing you exactly how I do make my music, but it also means that I'm showing you how to make music with tools that you might not necessarily have all the time. So I think it's important to sometimes try and do videos like this one, where I'm making a beat using a constraint, being that I'm going to use just free VSTs, mostly from the Labs plugin range. If you're not familiar with Labs, it's just a fantastic free resource of VST plugins made by Spitfire Audio, with a range of textures and instruments and drums and pianos and all sorts of different sounds that are completely free to use. I think by this point everyone seems to know about it to some extent. I've not seen many people actually delve into some of the more unusual or less popular VSTs that they've got in the range. So in this video I'm going to try and use as much of it as I can, making a beat with the Labs instruments and some stock plugins from Ableton as well. So I'll try not to use anything that's not stock Ableton that you wouldn't have in your own DAW. But yeah, here is the start of the beat. So the plan for this is I'm going to use everything Spitfire Audio Labs except for two things. The first one being just a simple vinyl crackle noise, which you can get for free online. And the second one, again, so you can get free online, just a sort of lo-fi kick. And then hopefully everything else, hats, percussions, instruments, I can all find within the Labs packs. But anyway, I'm going to kick it off by playing the ambience. So got this vinyl crackle as always, but I think I can find more texture from the Labs bundles. So I'm going to go in and find the LA Atmosphere, which is under experimental. Click on LA Atmos and then opens up this here, which has got various sounds recorded in LA. So there's all sorts of different sounds in here. City sounds, bird sounds, crickets. So it's pretty nice. So I think I'm going to go with this second F, sort of cricket sounds. So record that in and I'll have that running alongside the vinyl noise. But because it's a little bit too intense, I'm just going to throw on an auto filter to cut the low end and then cut in the high end as well. And then I can just sort of fade it in to taste. So I've got some atmospheres going, which is great. So next up, I'm going to start with a staple from Spitfire Audio Labs, which you've all probably heard of, which is the soft piano. It's a really, really nice sort of textured, moody, dark piano that works great in lo-fi, which is why everyone has probably got it in their arsenal. What I've done is I've pitched down 2 semitones just to give all the samples a slightly darker sound. So this is what it sounds like if you've never heard it before. So I'm just going to play it in a chord progression. I'm in 72 BPM, so I'll try and get 2 different variants on the chord progression just to mix it up somewhere in the track. So starting off with a simple, just playing the 4 chords that I've got in mind. So I'm playing 4 chords, the first one being the C minor, followed by an A flat, bear in mind everything's pitched down 2 semitones, followed by an F minor, and then back to an A flat. And then what I'm going to do now is also play it in an arpeggiated way, just to give a little bit of variance. Maybe I'll use that in the intro and then switch up to the basic chord voicings later. So now I've got the piano, I'm just going to lay it in some drums. So I'll start off with just a kick from my usual kick selection. So next up, I want to lay it in some sort of snares and percussions, and Labs has got you sorted for that one. So again, I'm going to open up Labs and I'm going to go to the LA Atmos. But if this time you click on LA Atmos percussion, it'll bring up this screen. So this has got various sort of Foley recording percussive sounds. So yeah, it's got some nice sounds. I'll try and record some percussion. I'll just record some percussion now. I'm just going to duplicate that and try some other textures as well. For these textures, I'm just going to try and filter out a lot of the low end. And maybe some of the high end as well. So now I've got a rough idea for the percussion. I'll probably add some more effects and stuff in a bit, but for now I'm just trying to get the flow of the track going, so I'll get some hi-hats in there as well. So for that I'm going to find the percussion kit with Labs. So if I hit percussion, there's this kit here which is basically a full sort of drum kit. It's got some nice hi-hats and stuff in there somewhere. Here we go. There you go, lo-fi whistles. Beautiful. Okay, so I'm just gonna get some. So I'll just try a simple hi-hat pattern, and I'll probably do some filtering as well. Cool, so we're getting there. I'm just going to try now and find a nice bass sound. I've never used this, but I know they've got a bass guitar, which could be good. So if you hit guitar and then you've got a bass. So I'll go for warm bass. So I've recorded just a simple sub bass. So I've got sort of the basics of the track going. And I've got a mix up on the keys later as well. So what I'm going to do now is just do a little bit of mixing. And try and flesh the track out a little bit more, add some of the textured within Labs, and then I'll break down all of the presets that I've used. So yeah, here is the final composition. So the track is finished, and as always I'm going to break down the full Ableton project now. I did use purely Labs instruments besides the kick and the atmosphere. So all the sounds that I talk about in this video are completely free to get if you're interested in using them. So I'll break down exactly what I'm doing and how I'm processing the sounds. So as I mentioned before, the ambience is just a vinyl crackle sample from royalty-free vinyls online somewhere. And I've laid it in with this bird sound from LA Atmosphere. Cut the highs, cut the lows. A lot of cutting on this because a lot of these sounds are quite sort of cinematic, and there's a lot of frequencies that you probably don't want in this sort of track. So there's a lot of auto filter and EQ on this, but there you go. That's what I needed to do. So yeah, that was just LA Atmos. And then when it gets to the main drop, I get rid of the sounds because I didn't want the bird sounds to be playing too prominently throughout. So that's the atmosphere introduction. Then the instrument group, we're starting off with, as I said before, again, Labs piano. All I've done is EQ to get rid of some of the muddy low end. Labs is sort of geared towards cinematic music, so there is a lot of sort of bass heavy sounds. A lot of EQing is needed often to get it more soft. But the sounds are free and they sound fantastic, so it's just one of those things you've got to do. So on the group here, I've got another EQ, some auto filter sweeps. So at the start, we're bringing the low end back in and fading it out towards the drop. And then I've also got a bit where I cut the high end of the instruments to give it sort of a muffled sound. So yeah, that's the piano first. And then we've got this synth layer, which again has got some saturation, quite heavy saturation, 25 decibels drive. Compensated it with the output a bit. I've got an auto pan moving the signal from left to right. And then I've got an auto filter cutting out all the low end because this is quite a big sound and I just wanted the high end for this. So this is from the synth pads, pad number 7. I think I just increased the attack so it faded in a little bit longer, but that's it really. The next up, I've got this lead line with the soft piano, and the nice thing about the soft piano is it does sort of have its own movement from the panning side of things, so it's not just mono, it has its inherent sort of stereo sound to it. Again, just the bog standard soft piano preset with a bit of an EQ to get rid of the lows and the high sort of high pitched frequencies, and then I've dropped a convolution reverb on there. The next up, I bring in the electric piano a bit later on. So this is the electric piano DI. I think there's a chorus version as well, but that's just DI. I've also filtered the top end away and a lot of the bottom end. I've added a saturation and some convolution reverb and some filter delay. So the filter delay just filters the sort of frequencies within this area, which is why you get just the higher frequencies being filtered and delayed. So that comes in about halfway through the track, just before the chord progression changes from the more arpeggiated to the just block chords. Next up, I've got this sort of string texture. So this again, auto filter, get rid of the low end, bit of convolution reverb. This is from the Arctic Swells, just for that, just a nice additional texture. You've got ample textures to choose from the labs. I think the problem with the labs for me when making this track was there was less sounds for more sort of lead melodies. They're all guitar sounds and different string instruments, but I didn't really like the sound of them in this context. So I stuck with the keys for that. And then next up, I've got another sort of synthy texture. Again, cutting the low end, I just want the high end to cut through. And this is Fragile Air from the Ondes Musicales. I can't remember what the context of that was, but sounded good. And then finally in the instrument, I just got this last little bit from the music box thing. So it's Hannah Peel's music box. And that again has got some heavy saturation, cutting the lows and the highs, convolution reverb, and this whole mod sort of echo. So yeah, that is the full instrument group. If I just sort of play it somewhere in the middle, this is what it sounds like isolated. Then I've also got the kick that I recorded in the intro, just a simple kick. And the bass as well, which was a Spitfire bass. So as I talked about earlier, just the bass warm amp. And I've tuned it down quite a lot to get that real subby feel. Probably needs a little bit more mix. It's just slightly bass heavy. I'll just knock that down to 0. And then finally we've got the drums, which were surprisingly full of texture and different interesting sounds within the labs to use. So I'll definitely be using these in normal beats. So started off with this from the LA Percussions Atmos, and then I layered in this one again from the LA Atmos Percussions, and then what I did was I froze perk 2 and pitched it down 12 semitones or a full octave. So then if you layer that with everything, you get quite a nice sort of texture, which is great in lo-fi beats. On the pitch down version, I added a filter delay as well. So if I isolate that, you've got two things going on the left and right pan. You've got this sort of top end that's sort of complementing the hi-hats. And then you've got this gritty sort of middle frequency delay, which is just adding a bit more sort of percussiveness to the beat. And then I also had the hi-hat loop here, which was just from the percussion patch. And then later in the track, I have some more texture for the sort of highs from the London atmosphere percussion bit. And that layers in with a real sort of reverb heavy percussive sound from the Opiate percussive kit. Which actually I'm going to duplicate here. And then for the drum bus, I've got a auto filter sweep, which sort of helps transition from different sections. So if I do it there as well, it just fades out nicely. Rather than it being a sudden stop, you sort of get that sense of fading down as it cuts away the high frequencies. That fades up again here as it builds up towards the sort of B section. And then I've also got a bit of reverb on there as well from Ableton stock reverb. With these, make sure you set that to high because it always comes eco as default, and it's just not as good quality. And they're really not very CPU intensive, especially for sort of modern computing. So I don't know why it defaults to eco, but there you go. And then I've got this tape machine preset, which I've mentioned before. It's from Elephant, a producer on YouTube. Definitely check him out. Elephant Ableton tutorials. But this has just got some color, which is a slight sort of EQ, bit of compression, and the wow and flutter. Just adding a slight bit of variance to some of the drum sounds. So yeah, that pretty much covers it. I'm currently working on a brand new sample pack, which will come with more competitions and giveaways and all sorts of things like that, as well as lots of new videos. I'm going to work on more free VST videos and more be making tutorials. So do let me know in the comments down below if there's anything you want to see more of that I'm not posting. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.